Welcome to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Chris Finn, and today we have a guest back with us who has coached 6 major champions, and you probably heard his episode. It was episode 145. Karl Morris is with us, the leader in mental coaching in all of Europe. It is an honor to have him back. Karl, welcome back to the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad.
Thanks, Chris. It's always good to have a chat. I enjoyed it last time, and let's see where this one goes.
Yeah, it was. For those of you who did not haven't listened, I would strongly recommend go check out episode 145. Karl covers the 4 big quadrants that he looks at, and that you should be aware of in your mental coaching before play, during play, in between, after. Talked a lot about where your attention is. It was just super tactical, and it was a wonderful episode. So definitely go check that out. That's episode 145, but. Since then, and I think that was like 6, 7, maybe 8 months ago. I don't know. It was a long time ago. You've had a lot going on over at Mind Caddy, and the word on the street is that there is an AI Karl wandering the intranet. So,
and the really worrying thing about the AI version, a few people, including my wife, Chris, have said it's better than the original version.
well, this is. I was excited to have you back on because we obviously. I want to dive in there. Since then we've actually had a couple of our players that we work with have actually worked with you, and I want to share with the listeners. We're going to go through kind of so you guys can kind of hear like real world how mental coaching should work and how it does work and the experiences of players who do it. But the other thing that I wanted you to come on and also like kind of dive into what and how AI is and how it's being used in this space is because this is going to be something where there's going to be a lot of this sort of thing popping up. And just like, when YouTube started and on social now, there's going to be people saying that they're experts and whatnot. And yeah, I would love for you to explain kind of how you guys went about, building the AI and what sort of benefit does that give people, getting to basically talk to AI Karl.
I mean, when I first heard of it, Chris, the guy Ben who works for me on the Mind Caddy app, I thought I was terrified it's going to make me redundant, and then I thought, well, maybe that's the idea at my age. But I mean, it's phenomenal. I think AI is one of those things that you can either get very upset about and rail against and pretend it's not there, or you try and embrace it the best way that you can. And in a nutshell, everything that I've ever done in terms of books and presentations and podcasts and things like that has all been fed into the AI. And basically you can ask it a question about your own game, and essentially it's me answering that question. And then it will prompt you with other questions. And what I'm keenly aware of, or very aware of, is that, with the best will in the world, not everybody's going to get a chance to work with me personally because of, time and finance and all the rest of it. But I do think that, for most people, we're probably pushing it open doors to a degree here, but I think so much can be gained from working on the physical side with you guys. But I think the mental side, I see so many people who are not getting close to what they know they can truly achieve with the golf. That formula of performance should equal potential, but it's minus interference. There's a lot of things getting in the way of people actually accessing the skills that they've got. And I think with a little bit better understanding of the mental side of the game, and at least having somebody to collaborate with so that you can converse with the AI and find out better ways of training and better ways of dealing with poor shots and things like that. My hope is it becomes available to so many more players across the globe.
Yeah, and I think one of the really interesting things to me was, everybody who listens here knows that we have the free golf fitness assessment that we look at mobility, and that's such a key entry point into our world on the physical side, because we got to know what the heck we need to work on with you before we're just going to blindly give you 10 exercises and say good luck. I love the idea. I know when we talked last time, you were in the middle of creating the big assessment, and now that's something I believe that's come to fruition. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. That when you join us on board the Mind Caddy, you can take this assessment and it will run you through various categories, how you respond to setbacks and things like that, what your work ethic's like, there's various categories within it, and you take the test, and then it'll come out and it'll feed out where you score relative to, do you score, let's say it's focus is one of them, or attention. Do you score relative to a tour pro, or are you scoring relative to a high handicapper? So I think it's giving people a reason to work on some of these things. Because the problem is with the mental game, as we've discussed, it's just this huge subject of where the hell do I start? What do I start with, and what do I work on? But at least with the assessment, you get a clearer idea where you could. And we're really keen, Chris, that it's not seen as, you're not exposing your weaknesses. You're looking for potential opportunities to develop some strengths.
And so, yeah, I think what would be really cool is if you could kind of talk through, we sent, like, Brent obviously is a phenomenal Canadian player who's working with you. He's working with us on all of his physical sides of things. I think it would be kind of cool to illustrate for everyone listening, kind of like, what is that experience like? People say, "Oh, I got to work on my mental game."
Yeah.
I guarantee if we polled 100 people, we'd get 100 different answers of what the heck that looks like. So, like, can you kind of illustrate for people, like for maybe not specifically Brent's journey, but maybe easier just to do that. What does that look like when somebody decides, hey, I'm gonna go work on my mental game, whether it's going through the Mind Caddy app and doing the assessment and doing it that way with the AI, whether it's doing it with you directly, like, what does a good mental coaching experience like what does that look like, from start to, and then obviously sharing kind of where Brent has got, because it's been pretty cool to see and hear where he's gotten to.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more than anything else, and it would be the same in your world, you don't want to see people wasting time. Life's precious and time is limited. So straight away, one of the things that, the mental game, what is it? Well, a big part of the mental game is understanding, if you're going to go to the range, you're going to work and you're going to train your golf. Are you training in a way that's training things like your attention? Are you going to work on things that are going to allow you to train your resilience, things like that? So, Brent, for example, is an objective guy. He likes to see numbers, and we've talked a lot about how if he's going to go and have a practice session, yes, there'll be some work on certain swing ideas that he's working on, but then how do we test if you're actually making progress? So a really simple one that I've had players work on for years is a short game, a training exercise called par 18, which a lot of people have heard of, but you can drill down with par 18 and say, okay, you've done some work on your short game physically, you've got technically better, right, let's test this out. So let's go to the chipping area. Let's play 9 different shots from 9 different locations. We'll do 3 easy, 3 medium, and 3 difficult. We'll chip on, and we'll go through exactly what you would do if you were playing in a tournament. So you'd mark the ball, you'd take your glove off, you'd do literally everything that you would do in a tournament. You would use the same golf ball you would use in a tournament. And so then at the end of that exercise of 9 shots from 9 different places, you actually have a score against a par of 18. Now we can start to see then, are you getting better specifically in a part of the game? Is there an objective reality to that? And I think, the vast majority of people who want to get better, they're not doing enough of that. They're not doing enough of training at the range that actually involves the mental side of the game as well as the physics. So it's not, the mental game isn't just sitting down and meditating or writing in a journal, whilst those parts have a part to play. The practical side of it is, can you go out there and play par 18, and if you duff a chip, which you will, can you deal with that? You're in that situation where you've got to score. How do you respond to that? So you're practicing your responses, you're practicing your attention. And I would be convinced, if I work with somebody, if I can get them to really look closely at their activity away from the golf course in the training, that would be one massive area of improvement. But it's like you said, it's got to be personalised. Just giving out blanket games and blanket drills, I think that's where hopefully the working one-on-one with somebody gives them a personalised program. And then, when you get out on the golf course, let's say, for instance, that you know that your responses to shots have held you back, that anger's an issue and you want to be a calmer golfer or whatever. Okay, let's create an objective game for that, so that you go out on the golf course and, if your responses to your shots on that particular hole have been, okay, you've been neutral, you've not lost the plot, you get a tick on that hole. If you lose the plot, you get a cross. So we can get to the end of the round and we've got either 18 ticks or a bunch of crosses, and then we've got some feedback, objective feedback, instead of, oh, you need a better attitude. Well, what the hell does that mean? There's no numbers with that. But if you could play around a golf and you think, but I've got 6 crosses there because I've really responded badly to some shots, and look at the effect that's had, then we can start to get competitive about improving the mental game, just in the same way you'd get competitive about improving the physical side.
So if we kind of expand on that instance, if somebody's anger issues or whatever it may be, and let's say they get six no bueno, no good on 6 of the holes. What sort of what does then the intervention kind of look like at that point, right? So they say, hey, here's my baseline. What now? Yeah.
So that's when the work comes in together, whereby they've identified that 6 times in the round the response was poor. Now we can sort of talk about what impact did that have on the rest of your round? How did that infiltrate your other shots? Okay, right. How do we get better at that? And just for everybody listening, one really, really useful way of getting better at this for those there'll be a tiny number of people, I guess, Chris, who'll recognise themselves in this, that maybe the responses to shots on the golf course are not the most supportive thing that they do. But one intervention we've used a lot over the years is what we call facts, not opinions. So that when you hit a shot, what most people do when they hit a shot at golf, they give an opinion. So the opinion is, I'm useless, it's not my day, I'm an idiot, I can't play this game. Well, it may seem a valid opinion at the time, but it's an opinion.
Right.
But the problem is with opinions inflame our brain. And when our brain gets inflamed, we start to do stupid things. Anger makes us stupid. Whereas facts, if you can play a round of golf and you can respond to a shot with a fact, the fact is the face was open, the face was closed. You hit it too high on the face, too low, it was off the toe or the heel. You caught the ground before the ball. It's amazing when you make that commitment to facts rather than opinions, how it starts to neutralize your responses. So you're not just saying to somebody, oh, go out there and have a better attitude. You're giving them a practical tool that they can work with to get to the end of the round where there's 18 ticks rather than 12 ticks and 6 crosses.
So that actually brings up an interesting question, because I was playing the other week with a guy. It was a kind of a game. I got paired, was in a cart with him. I've never heard somebody with more negative self-talk. I mean, it got to the point it was entertaining. Some names he was calling himself I'd never heard of. But how important is that self-talk? And is it like, just changing the self-talk enough? Or to your point, does there then have to be actionable kind of things taken around that, right? So, I mean, he'd hit a bad shot and oh, you da 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 da. I don't think we have an explicit rating, so I can't say what he said. But does him, like, let's say that guy just starts saying positive things, does that do anything, or does it have to go? I love the idea of the objective versus opinions.
You see, it's objectivity is so powerful in the sense that I would start with somebody like that, because you're not going to get somebody who's called themselves all kinds of shit for years. They're not, the idea of being positive would be an insult to his intelligence.
Yeah.
But if you got him to say, okay, let's just play a round of golf where we observe your reactions, and every time you have one of those moments where you're bitching and moaning and calling yourself names, you have to mark it down on the card. When he comes in and he sees he's got 16 crosses on that card, yeah. just the act of observation, Chris, is powerful, and the act of making it an objective reality rather than, oh, you need to be positive, buddy. Well, good luck with that one, And then I think when the observation, I've in all the 30 years I've been doing this, when I've got somebody to actually observe genuinely their behaviour, I know for a fact that change is on the way. Because the reality dawns on them that, most people are doing what they're doing because they're blissfully unaware of it. It's just what they do and what they are. And, I think most people would realise that, doing all that stuff and calling yourself all those names is probably not the most productive thing that you can do with your time when you play golf. But unless you first of all make it objective and you observe it, nothing's going to change. But I think that's where the one-to-one work becomes so important.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, 16 crosses, that would have been an improvement for him. Yeah, he was definitely in the 30s to 40s.
And and we're joking about it, but I think, that guy. I look at it and I think, for whatever reason, that's the round of golf is not a pleasant experience, is it? It's he's not getting the maximum out either his ability or what the game of golf could give him. Now, if somebody's really happy doing all that crap all of the time, fine. But if you get a sense that golf could be something more than it currently is, surely it's worth then exploring some of these areas.
Yeah, 100%. And then what about the? So let's say you go down that path. I'd love to get into maybe some of the stuff you've done with Brent, but let's say now you implement, observe. The golfer starts observing. Now, it sounds like naturally you'll start to see, if we use that golfer, like 36 next round, maybe it's only 18, and just by the fact of just observing, they'll naturally become more aware and maybe filter at some. What comes after that?
And just on that, just to reinforce that, if you make a game out of it, it then becomes fun. If you make a game out of the fact that you had 18 crosses and now you're down to 14, down to 12, down to 10, it's like your work. When you actually start to see objective change and you see data moving in the right direction, then it's very encouraging.
So what you're saying for listeners is basically, if you guys can if you can observe and objectively track the mental game performances, what you're saying is like what we see on the physical side is, hey, you got 5 degrees, hey, you got another 5 degrees, hey, can I do an extra 10 minutes? You see the similar side on the mental side.
100%. Yeah. And you're in a way, you're actually then gamifying change. And what you're doing for a lot of it, Chris, is that you're turning the competitive nature that makes somebody really angry on the golf course, you're turning it in a positive direction. So they become competitive about their attitude. And that sounds a complete paradox, but they actually start to gain real pleasure by seeing objectively that their attitude gets better.
That's very interesting. So then now, as they start to progress, where do you go? Like, where do you take somebody from there? Just keep doing it until it goes away? Is there a progression? Like, I know for us, there's like, hey, mobility is good. Now we move on to strength or power or whatever. Is there kind of that similar sort of progression that people tend to see?
Definitely, yeah. So that a progression could be, we talked in the past about the 4 quadrants, the before golf, during, in between, and after. Then you would look a little bit deeper into the real low-hanging fruit mentally, which is the in-between. The 95% of golf that isn't golf.
Yeah.
And first of all, the first protocol might be the reactions, but then what happens after that? And most people's experience of the 95% is they're in the head, first of all, and they're either regretting the past or being anxious about the future. They're having a conversation in the head about something that's happened or something that might happen.
So, like, I can't believe that I swing so steep. I've been working, and I can't believe I hit. I know those trees are there, or oh my gosh, that shot is going to be so terribly hard. It's the pins on the ledge, and I short side of it. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. And even worse, things like, I hit such a good shot there that airmailed over. I didn't deserve that triple bogey, and why the hell's this happening to me? And all of this stuff that we come out with, where we're basically just resisting reality. Most of the problems that we have mentally is that we resist the reality of the game. And the reality of the game is you're going to be unlucky. You're going to hit good shots that don't reward you. You're going to get good bounces and bad bounces. But then drilling deeper into the in-between time, there was a guy called Fred Shoemaker 30 years ago said to me, he said, what about if that in-between time was the most important time in the game of golf? What about if you really looked at that? And when I heard that, I thought, what the hell is this guy talking about? I'd never even considered it. I'd never even thought about it. But ultimately, what that 95% does give you an opportunity to do is actually be present to your experience. Our mind is so busy these days. We're so distracted. We're on our phone. We've got so much going on that golf should be a sanctuary from all of that. And there's a phrase I use a lot with players that was taken from a guy called Fritz Perls, who said, we need to stop thinking and come to our senses.
What does that mean?
So if you think about it, stop thinking. What is thinking generally made up of? It's made up of, I should have done this, and I hope this is not going to happen. It's made up of stories about the past and the future. Whereas when we tune into our physical senses, the only place our physical senses can be is the present. Now, we hear all the time that we should be in the present. Well, again, making a game of this, I've had some amazing results with players whereby we'll say to them, right, you're going to play 6 holes today, six, and 6, and you're going to tune into either what you can see, what you can hear, or what you can feel for those 6 holes. So the first 6 holes, they would tune in between shots to what they can see. So they would actively be looking out on the golf course of what they can see. 6 holes tuning into the sounds of the course. 6 holes tuning into what they can feel as they're walking along. So you isolate one of the 3 senses in 6 holes. And I promise, and everybody, if you're serious about your golf, should try this. I promise everybody there'll be one of those senses that will really make a difference in their ability to quieten the mind and deal with the ups and downs of the round. I had a very good German player, top player. He had no response with the visual stuff. He had no response with the feel stuff. But tuning into the sounds around him as he's walking in between shots has had a dramatic impact on his relationship to the game and his ability to bounce back from setbacks.
That's amazing. Well, I'd love to pivot a little bit to pressure. I've had a couple questions from some of our members just in some Q&As that we've done. And there was one of the questions in particular was, because I told them that we were going to do this, and they said, can you ask Karl, why is it that I don't, like, if I'm just out playing with my buddies, I will lose money, like I'm not going to beat them. But if there's a bet, like basically, if I'm just out playing for fun, I'm going to shoot a high score. But if we put a bet and it's like high stakes, I will win every single time. And then there's another guy kind of chirped in, and he's like, well, wait, I'm the total opposite. The second there's stakes and like a shootout and a member guest or whatever, like I'm a world class having a beer playing with the boys guy, but the second you put me in a tournament, I fall apart. Is that something you've seen before, where some people, like 2 situations, one guy does really good in one and the other guy does really good in the other, and they both kind of drop the ball in the other situations?
It's a really interesting subject, and there's a simple answer, but then the solutions are a little bit more complex. The simple answer, Chris, when we go on a golf course or a football field or a tennis court or whatever, in its simplest form, our brain is perceiving an environment, and think of this from an evolutionary perspective. Our brain is perceiving an environment either as a threat or an opportunity. Now, if we perceive a threat, there is a physiological response to threat. Now, as you know, the physiological response to threat that's hardwired into us is fight, flight, or freeze.
Yep.
Now, obviously, neither of those 3 are very useful for golf. So if I perceive the guy who looks at the bet as an opportunity to win, is going to have a different physiological response to the one who sees it as a perceived threat, and the physiological response to that. So, this is where, again, we'd explore working with players individually. How is your brain perceiving the environment called golf? And if it is perceiving it as a threat, no amount of working on the range, no amount of physical training can actually allow you to coordinate movement. Because if there's a threat response, your movement coordination and your mind-body connection will be impaired. So then looking at how you perceive the situation, and in effect, some people, we've got to reduce the threat in terms of the perception. Other people, how do we create more of an opportunity mindset where we're actually pursuing good shots as opposed to trying to avoid poor shots?
So is that for the guy who struggles in the drinking a beer, playing with his buddies, but thrives in the competitive environment? Is that a situation where you have to figure out a way for that guy to see more opportunity as opposed to just kind of a throwaway round and hanging out?
Absolutely, yeah. So the guy in that situation could still create an opportunity to play a game against himself, even though he's out with his buddies enjoying himself. There could be a game within a game that he plays, just off the top of my head. If he created a sort of game where, I don't know, it was greens in regulation, where that if he didn't hit a certain number of greens in regulation, there was a forfeit. So there's an opportunity. It's at the end of the day, Chris, when we go and play golf, we're making all this stuff up.
Yeah.
We're just basically in a piece of rubber around a field. What we perceive the game to be is for us to decide. That's the beautiful thing about it. And if what you've made up in your head is creating threat in your brain, there is an opportunity to create a different narrative.
That's brilliant. So the other question that I wanted to ask you that I got in that Q&A from our members was, they can, obviously the announcers on TV, when they're watching the professionals at home, they're watching whatever, the majors or whatever it may be, the announcers will, they'll at some point they'll do a slow-mo analysis of the swing. You can observe what techniques guys are using, if they're shallow, if they're steep. You can observe if they're hitting knockdowns. You could observe their short game shot selections, those sorts of things. Is there any way for an amateur watching to even the guy who said in particular he likes watching the featured groups, so he can kind of watch them all throughout? He was asking if there was a way to see a golf professional mental strategies in terms of I guess that'd be particularly in the in-between quadrant, but I didn't know. I know we had the last time we had you on, we told the story, and you guys need to go check this out. Episode 145, the red dot on the glove, great story. But is there any way for just somebody watching an event to maybe kind of pick up some idea of kind of what these guys are doing at the highest levels?
That's where I think the in-between becomes even more interesting then, because we never see this on TV because it would be pretty boring
watching them walk 300 yards to their ball. Yeah.
Look at the way he's walking for 5 hours. But if you do go to a tournament, I used to always be fascinated by this, and the in-between gives so much away. And one really interesting one people could even experiment with themselves, Chris, is that if you think about the phrase that we use, or phrases that we use in everyday life, we'll say, if somebody's optimistic, we'll say things are looking up. If somebody's a bit miserable, they'll say he seems to be a bit down. Well, if you observe, and you can do it with yourself or observe other golfers, if you watch the behavior of their eyes in between shots in that 95%, generally you'll find somebody who is inside of their head beating the crap out of themselves. Their eyes will be literally down as they're walking along. So when our eyes go down, physiologically, we then go inside of our head. We get into our narratives. So a real interesting one we've done with many players over the years looking at this is to play a round of golf and just give yourself the task of, when you're walking in between shots, see if you can keep your eyes above the level of the flag.
Interesting.
Now, as you walk and you keep your eyes above the level of the flag, number one, it probably helps you tune into your senses, as we've
Mm-hmm.
already talked
Yeah.
about. But absolutely, you will never see anybody who is depressed. You'll never see them with their eyes up.
Hmm.
I'm talking about in everyday life.
Yeah.
Somebody is down, is physically down, and they're inside of their head. I'll give this was a guy had a big influence on me with his writing, and he was a psychotherapist called Milton Erickson, who, if you've heard of NLP was basically founded on the work that Milton Erickson did, and he was famous. He used to give people tasks. He was one of those psychotherapists who had real impact on people's lives, and one of the things that he used to do, he would work with people who maybe had issues with depression and things like that. And one of his famous interventions, he would say to people, when you walk, and this was obviously a different time, but he said, when you walk from my office to your home, as you walk home, I want you to make sure you count the number of chimney pots that you can see.
Hmm.
So the depressed guy would have to go out, and he'd say, "Why the hell am I going to do that?" And he would walk, and he'd be counting the number of chimney pots, and he would say, "You have to do that every day when you go for a walk. Count the number of chimney pots." And, famously, the line is that so many people would come back into his office and say, "I don't know why, Milton, but how are you getting on?" He's, "I don't know why, Milton, but things seem to be looking up." You know, these are things that can seem insignificant, but are so significant in a way that, how do we carry ourselves on a golf course? Does it support us, or does it encourage us to get inside of our head and regret the past and be anxious about the future?
That's incredibly insightful. So, all right, eyes up above the
The level
flag.
of the flag. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess even like, I guess it'd be interesting to see if guys riding a cart, if they play better when they're riding or driving. Because if you're driving, you got to have your eyes up, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah. It would be an interesting one, but that this idea of looking ahead and looking forward to something.
Yeah.
All these anecdotal phrases that we use in everyday life do point a lot to the physiology. The mind leads the body, but the body leads the mind.
100%. Well, Carl, I know you're super busy, and I only have you for a little bit here, but so I wanted to, before, right when we jumped on, you told me that you had something for our listeners that you wanted to kind of talk about. So you didn't tell me what it is, so I'm going to give you the floor.
Yeah, no, I'm always keen to help out if I can, because it's been great working with you guys so far, and as you mentioned, a few clients like Brent and Hans and one or two others have come over. So there's going to be an offer of a consultation with me, a Zoom consultation, which I normally charge.
Yeah, that's not cheap.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Somebody once said to me, "It's reassuringly expensive," which I thought was
Exactly.
a great, great way of phrasing it. So there's going to be 4 people if they're interested in an initial Zoom consultation. For your guys who listen, I'm gonna do that in a
That's
complete.
wow. That's super generous. So, and what's the best way for them to? So just to recap, 4 of you guys um, will have. There's an opportunity, so obviously limited number. How many, what's the best way for them to do that?
If they just contact me direct, I think you got it in the notes there, but the email is Karl. That's Karl with a K at themindfactor.com.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes. And so if you're listening, I would stop right now and email. So I'm assuming it's the first 4. So
Yeah.
by the time we get to the end of this, they'll probably be gone. But definitely shoot Carl a note. Karl at themindfactor.com. We will put that in the show notes for you guys as well too. And thank you, Karl. That's super generous. Thank you so much for giving your time to the
No,
listeners.
I'm happy to do that because I know the difference it can make. And for those, we'll do the first 4, but for those after that, we can set up. There's an opportunity to test out the Mind Caddy for free. There's a free 7-day trial that they can test that out. So they might not get the real version of me, but they can speak to the AI. They can speak to the AI version.
Well, if they're not in the first 4, I'm sure they could get the real, but they'll have to pay the reassuringly expensive fee for that. But that's amazing. Thank you so much, Karl. And for those of you guys who want to follow Karl, the website mindcaddy.golf, as well as mindfactor.net, correct? Those are the two spots to go. Okay, so we'll put all that in the show notes for you guys. Most important, Karl at themindfactor.com. Shoot him a note. Get some help. He's the best that I know of, and that's why it's been an honor to have him on twice, and that's why we partner with him here at P4S Golf. So, Karl, thank you so much for coming on today, and appreciate you, and I look forward to doing it again soon.
Oh, it's great, Chris. It's just great to see what's possible, isn't it? With I've seen so many great results with our people I've referred to you, and hopefully vice versa. It's just, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to just see what somebody could achieve.
It is, yeah. So everyone take advantage of that, and as always, thank you so much for hanging out with me here on the Golf Fitness Bomb Squad, and till next time, we'll see you then.